And Meltzer would say, at least he hasn't no-showed yet, although he had everyone scared again on the 21st, as he canceled 2 flights and arrived late. The next morning, all the wrestlers take a van from the hotel to the airport to take the first flight to Orlando. Hardy wasn't there, but when they woke him up, everyone had to wait 25 minutes for him to be ready. Now they've put Frankie Kazarian in charge of Hardy to make sure he gets up on time and have Dusty Rhodes do his promos because they don't have faith in him talking, but the crowd does see him as a real star. Boy, this has got to be a stressful deal. You got one of your biggest opportunities here. You're still trying to eke out some profit. You're living and dying by what's happening every week. And now one of your newfound, prize ponies here in the showcase. Is he going to show up? Is he not? Did he make that flight? Do we need to get him another one? Is he going to wake up? Can we get him on the bus? How do you remember all this going down? And why is Frankie the guy chosen to help wrangle him a little bit?
So when I read that note, I thought to myself, no. Did Frankie volunteer to that? I don't recall. I'm not saying it's not true. I don't recall us saying, hey, Frankie, you've got this duty. It may have been, hey, I'll kind of help out. And again, Frankie's a great dude. So out of convenience, it could have been a Meltzer story. It could have been for that day. Frankie volunteered. I don't really recall that, but I do remember whether it was Bob Ryder, Jeff, why are you putting up with this? Or Dixie, or maybe other talent. And I'm going to go back to this thread that we kind of backed into unexpectedly. Hey guys, Jeff kind of moves the needle. If the worst thing we have to do is kind of help guide him here and there, it's for the greater good. It's the best for the company. What's the old saying? You got into Southern sayings. Don't throw out the baby
with the bathwater.
Yeah. So look, it's the reality of dealing with top talent, and it's always been that way. I mean, Austin, Rock, any tip-top talent, they've got baggage or uniqueness to deal with. That's what happens. It's just the reality of dealing with talent. You gotta have to figure out how to navigate that path. But Jeff at this time, and certainly not till years later, because I didn't address Mahone, but I don't want to say he was not an issue, but it was nothing to the point of, okay, we can't deal with him. He's got to go. It just that wasn't there. It was maybe a little late here and there. And he lives about 90 minutes from the airport at his home, and, a 6 a.m. flight. And I'm like, Bob, he ain't going to make that first flight out. Well, our company policy is book them their first flight out of, their home, because we were bringing them in on Wednesday mornings again to save a hotel on Tuesday nights. Was that the best decision? Hindsight 2020. But when you're dealing with a more than finite budget, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, we learned that the hard way at StarCast 1. You book them to bring them in the day before, because if there is a delay, boy, it will happen.
Yep.
If you're on that first flight out, it's usually on time. After that, well, shit rolls downhill. As those delays roll in, it just is what it is. I learned that in 2018, and now everybody comes in the day before. So let's talk about it. It was hyped as the biggest single match in TNA history. It's going to be the first ever Jeff Jarrett versus Jeff Hardy match. And it's called A Date with Fate. And I guess this was actually even bigger than your Raven and Sting match. But Meltzer would say that, this is a match that everybody's kind of worried about, because Jeff has not been wrestling on a consistent basis. So it's written in the Observer. Jarrett laid it out shorter than most NWA title matches and only went 11 minutes and 15 seconds. And he booked much of it as brawling outside of the ring, as well as putting a lot of focus on the Dusty Rhodes and Vince Russo angle, where both of those guys are positioned outside of the ring, because allegedly you recognized Jeff Hardy's limitations. You win with a guitar shot while Dusty and Russo are arguing outside, distracting Hardy. That's directly from the Observer. Are you trying to just leave it open ended and doing storytelling, or are you concerned with, hey man, I don't want him to gas out. We want people to get the Jeff Hardy experience, but if we can't give them that, let's just lean on story right now.
Yeah, bingo. I
Yeah.
mean, do what we think is the best for long-term business.
Yes.
Get the match, but equal as important, progress the story. Because again, this is one of those booking lessons that until you've kind of experienced it, observed it, then experienced it, and then kind of been in the seat, it's hard to understand. But when you hear the old saying, hey, this dude is already over, you don't have to do anything else to get him over. He's
Right.
over. That was Jeff. It's not like a 30-minute match was going to get him more over. It's not like a loss was going to get him over. It's not like a win was going to get him over. How do we progress the story? That makes sense.
It does make sense. And you guys did progress the story. You wind up building towards a ladder match at the very first Victory Road pay-per-view.
Okay.
It's November 7th, 2004. According to the Observer, it was a pretty rough road to get there. The plan was Jarrett versus Hardy and not Monty Brown, as was originally planned, with the idea Hardy's name means more to the mainstream for November 7th. Of course, Hardy was doing everything possible to make sure it didn't happen. This is all directly from Dave Meltzer. After the decision was made to go with Hardy, he not only no-showed the September 28th Impact taping where he was supposed to have a squash match over David Young, he also never even called in before the show or give them any sort of explanation. They still pushed him for the show the next week, even though they hadn't heard from him. He did come on October 5th and pinned Abyss, while Brown pinned Raven in the semifinals of the tournament. So it appears they're going with the plan. But Hardy had told people that he left a miserable company to come to another miserable company. He was excited at one point about being here, but quickly realized the whole promotion was just a vehicle for Jarrett and was quickly losing interest. It was a risk pushing him to begin with. Some people in wrestling just don't get that there was a very good reason he was let go by WWE. And as we've written before, unless he goes for help himself, nothing is going to change by simply pretending to see and hear no evil, although that is the common theme in wrestling nowadays. So the pay-per-view main event is Jarrett versus Hardy. They went with the original plan. Hardy asked for a ladder match. We'll stop it right there before we talk about the match. Well, I guess we should mention the final on October 12th in Orlando. Let's see a ref bump. Hardy hits a swanton. There's no ref. Abyss hits Hardy with a black hole slam. Raven hits Brown with a chair and a DDT. That allows Hardy to win. And I'm curious what you remember of this sort of hokey pokey moment here. Where is he happy? Is he coming? Do we have him? Do we not? What do you remember?
Well, issues, and I'm trying to think. Well, first note is that on online chatter, and I try to rack my brain. I'd love to get the old crew back in a room and try to see what we could recall. But I think you casually mentioned there, or Meltzer Keller did, or whatever it was, that it was going to be Monty's slot. And you kind of think back, of course, Jeff Hardy is going to sell many more pay-per-view buys. He had, the at this
Women
point,
and children and all that. Yeah.
yeah. But the what if Monty had been in that, because we were headed down that road with Monty, but it was the obvious choice with Jeff, that crazy 12-foot ladder when he wanted a real big ladder. But no, there were issues. I mean, Jeff was battling his demons. I didn't call it that then. He didn't call it that then. But there was again, we were doing at this point. I think and I'm not exactly sure which dates, but I think we had officially left the Impact, the Asylum in Nashville, and we were just doing Orlando. But Jeff was having a tough time. I don't believe for a minute that was his mindset, that he didn't want to be there. Specifically TNA, he didn't want to be a lot of places. He just was battling his demons. And Jeff has never been a guy who could care less about winning or losing. That's another thing about his philosophy. He always knew how to get himself over, regardless of the finish, regardless of the high spots. Jeff's Jeff. And that's another thing that is you hear old timers through the years. I think I remember Dick Murdoch saying something to the effect, Wahoo McDaniel on a car ride. Guys that know how to get over, you're not going to deny them. Period. We're using that theme a lot. Get over. Jeff was one of those guys. He knew how to get over and stay over. So finishes, matches, high spots did not affect whether he wanted to be there or not. The outside forces that he was dealing with, that affected him obviously pretty bad.
At this point, you're still partying, enjoying life.
You hear that?
Yeah, that only happens on your connection, just so you know.
What the hell is
I don't know. It doesn't happen on any other show we've ever done, but on your show, about once a week, the ghosts of Goodlettsville want to come on down and hang
with
out.
all my high speed fast internet?
No. Yeah, I mean, it was even there on the regular ass internet, but it's fine. I mean, that's Jeff trying to tap in and hear that was old Nero right there.
There it is.
Willow the Wisp or whatever.
So what's your question? Because I can
see you're partying back then.
Oh yeah.
At that point, do you believe that Jeff is involved with both drugs and alcohol, or did you just say, "Oh man, he likes to have a beer every now and again, no big deal"? Was that your attitude at the time?
You know what? And see, this is where that disease can really isolate you. And obviously, clear thinking is not in anybody battling that. But because I was a guy at this time, I partied after
the matches.
And it, when I finally went to bed or whatever it may be, when I woke up, it was run hard, but from a work point of view until the show's over again. I didn't really give it a lot of headspace thinking, what is he using or not using or drinking or not drinking? It was, man, his partying's got out of hand.
Well, I just know sometimes there's certain things that people do that make them reclusive. And so they kind of withdraw.
Yeah.
And then there's other things, like I don't mind saying, I'm a social drinker. I don't ever sit here at the house and drink by myself. Like that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But like if I'm going to go out with my buddies and we're going to have, a late liquid lunch on a Saturday and watch some football games, yeah, I'm probably going to have some alcohol, but I'm not going to do that when I'm at home. So I don't sort of recluse up with my indulging and imbibing, if you will. It becomes a social function. And I didn't know, like, because I've been around enough to know that after the shows, sometimes there is a cooler with beer and guys are hanging out and, hey, let's go to the hotel bar. Or, hey, I know there's a party over here or whatever. But I know there's other guys who say, no, I kind of do my own thing. I'm out of here.
Yeah. And look, the disease of addiction and alcoholism is not cookie cutter by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But I would say the overwhelming majority in the dark days, it's all isolate, using, drinking.
I got you.
Every one of us. And once it gets really chronic,
the canoe. I got you.
There you go. You isolate. It's what happens. I'm like you, Conrad. I was social until I wasn't.
I got you.